So, Thomas here back at the helm, and we will today introduce you, gentlemen, and everyone that is following us on the streaming platform that we are using to application state using Redux. And I have an unofficial subtitle to this presentation, and that is Redux as simple as it gets. As simple as it gets. And why did I choose that subtitle? Well, because generally speaking, Redux is perceived by many as something extremely complex, and I would say that it doesn't necessarily have to be. God bless you. Gesundheit, Emma. So it doesn't have to be. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It has a few building blocks, and it has a little bit of confusing naming standards and so on. But to be honest, it is as complex as you want to make it. And some people, I don't know, want to make it harder than it is because it makes them feel better or so. My approach to life in general is summarized in a phrase that you've heard me say so many times, and I will continue to say that, and that is pick the low-hanging fruit, right? So let's see if we can pick a low-hanging fruit on this one. Okay? All right, so Redux application state, as simple as it gets. We have a quote. We always have quotes, and this quote is from Walt Disney. I always like to look on the optimistic side of life, but I am realistic enough to know that life is a complex matter. And I think I like this one. It's a good quote. Look at this in both an optimistic way, but recognize that there are a few moving parts that makes this a little bit complex. This particular topic. Good pick. Who picked this one? Did you pick this one, Emma?
Pick this one.
You picked this one. That's a very good quote. I like this quote.
Thank you.
You see, quotes are good. Quotes are really good. They kind of encapsulate a lot of thoughts and so on. So let's keep on doing that. All right, a few talking points for today. So we have a general understanding how this will go down. I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea of application state with the Redux and why do we even bother about this, the benefits of using application state. This might be a little bit abstract in a way because there are certain things that you just can't talk your way through, but I want to do it anyway. And then we're going to talk about the technology. Well, we're not going to look underneath the hood so much. We just want to understand the building blocks, right? So this would be the equivalent of, how do you operate a car? Steering wheel, gas pedal, and a brake, right? In an American car, at least, which is exactly, it corresponds well to Redux, because Redux has three major components that you have to understand. So without looking underneath the hood how things are happening, we're gonna look at what do we need to do in order to use Redux in a proper way and keep state on an application level. And then there will be a code along. Right. So let's move through this presentation as quickly as possible, so we can move on. Redux provides a solid and very stable and also mature solution to managing state on an application level, not on component level, but on application. And we will talk about the differences about that. And what you can do by using the things that Redux brings to the table is to end up with a very well organized and fairly easy to understand application structure, because Redux brings a lot of functionality to the table that will allow you to avoid props hell and passing state around and so on, right? So that's doable. And what Redux basically does is that it creates an application-wide state tree. state trees are just another word for object, or trees is another word for object in this case, in this setting, which cannot be changed directly. Very similar to the component state. You can't change it directly, even though it's an object. You need to do it by a setter method, right? And you have to read it through a getter method. So you modify it through functions rather than modifying directly. And when you want to change something through a setter, then an entirely new object is created, and I will show you how that is, or what that looks like. If we talk a little bit about benefits, predictability of outcome, there is always one source of truth. You have one object and one object only, and that is the store. No confusion about how to sync the current state with your object. You don't have to pass anything around. It creates less code and clearer code as a result. So one change in one part of application can have effect on other parts of the application if you want that to happen, without having to worry about updating the virtual DOM manually or anything like that. Maintainability is also an important thing, because having a predictable outcome and strict organization and structure makes the code easier to maintain in the long run. We're also talking about organization. I already mentioned it. It's stricter about how your code should be organized, which again makes code more consistent and easier for a team to work with. Having said this, I just want to give you a disclaimer out of the box, straight from get-go, that the way I present and I structure my applications in Redux is a little bit opinionated. There are no conventions. This is not Rails world, so convention over configuration doesn't really exist. In JavaScript, we have much looser ways of doing things. I have tried to set up. Am I like covered by my computer on camera? Like totally? Well, you're gonna have to live with it. Yeah, I can't really fix
see
that
your
at
eyes.
the moment. You see my eyes. Anyway, so it's opinionated. It's my way of doing things, but it is a common way. You will see that it's logical, and it does what it's supposed to do. Right. With Redux, you can do server rendering easier if you want to do initial renders of your application for CEO purposes or a better user experience and so on. You can create a store programmatically like with an initial state if you want, so that everyone can see a specific state of the application already at the initial render. There are good helper methods in terms of developer tools, so that's very convenient, and ease of testing. Now, the first rule of writing testable code is to write small functions that do only one thing and that are independent. And Redux code is mostly functions. It's very modular, very split up, that are just that. They are small, pure, and isolated, and they are fairly easy to test. And in applications, if you do E2E testing, that is also not intrusive at all. You don't have to do any changes to your Cypress tests in any way, unless you want to, but that's another matter. The functionality is the function. It doesn't affect acceptance tests at all out of the box. And there is a huge community and ecosystem. So if you are learning or about Redux or using different libraries that use Redux, that's really good, open sourced, and with all the benefits that comes with that. Now let's talk about building blocks of Redux. The building blocks are 3, okay, and these are really important. And there are 3 things that you have to understand. So you're gonna have to live with it, basically. Okay, it's if you think that remembering about 3 things about three objects is a lot, then you need to take a deep breath, okay? Because it's not. So what we're talking about is actions, reducers, and store. That's basically it. The store is self-explanatory, right? That's the actual object that will hold your state, right? Now, actions are the actions that you dispatch to change that store, and the confusion might be about the reducers. What do they do? Well, the reducers are the functions that actually modify state by looking at the previous state, looking at what you want to do, and producing a new state object. Okay, so they are like the man in the middle. If you want to talk a little bit about MVC, then that would be the C. The reducers would be the C in MVC, the controller that actually performs that action. But don't take that my word for it. Don't worry about that. If we look at it in a graphical, or an attempt to show this flow in a graphical format, you have a component. The component dispatches an action. The action is modifying the store using the reducer, and then the store is sent off to the component again by subscribing to it. And then the simple truth with Redux is that if the state changes, then the component is re-rendered if that component is reliant on that state. And that is still true. It was true in component state, and it is true with application state. So there's nothing new there. If the store changes, and if that store change affects the component that you're working with, then the component will be re-rendered, and React will do its magic and display the user interface the way it is supposed to be displayed based on that particular state. Okay? Now, let's talk about actions. Actions are used to send information from the application to the store. Sending information to the store is needed to change the application state after whatever, user interaction, any internal events or API calls or what have you, right? Something must trigger the need to dispatch an action, okay? And jot down the word dispatch, because it's a very important word in this context. So when something happens, when the application is subject to some, for instance, user interaction, a user clicks on a button and it is supposed to do something, then we can dispatch an action to our reducers, the controller. Now, actions, they are JavaScript objects, and this is an example of an action. Now, these actions, these objects need to have at least one property, and that property is type. It's a required property of that particular action. You can't have one without it. Okay. Then there's an optional attribute or property that is called payload, usually called payload. Out of convention, it should be called payload. And that contains the data that the reducer will need in one way or another to update that state. Okay. This is optional. You don't have to have it. You can have reducers that do some static things, predefined things and so on. And we will look into that as well. So that's about it. If you have a payload, that will be sent off to the store one way or another, depending, of course, how your reducer deals with it. But the type is really important. And by convention, we upcase the type content, right? So it's a string or an object, but more on that later. But it should be upcased. So in this case, we are sending off an action that is called authenticate user, and then we're sending off some data with that. Okay. Type upcased. Now, you need to dispatch this action. That's hence hence my mention of the word dispatch, right? So you need to dispatch an action with a type if needed, and if needed a payload to the store or to the that will be picked up by the reducer. and to create a new state. So let's say that we have in our component, this is actually actual code, we are using a hook that is called use dispatch that will come from the React Redux library. It's another hook that you will have to remember. And then we are creating a variable user data in email with an ID or whatever, right? We get it from somewhere, perhaps a form that the user fills in and whatever, and then we dispatch this object, this type authenticate user, and the payload would be the user data in this case. Does that make sense? 3 lines of code.
Yep.
We created the dispatch by using the hook. We create the user data and we dispatch that action with it. Now, actions can be created by using functions, and again, this is optional. We will not use it today in our demo. And these functions are then called action creators. You can see that the only purpose for this action creator that I show on screen is to return the action object. That's the only thing that does. You still have to dispatch it, okay? And you don't have to use action creators, at least not to start with, and we will not do that today. The reason why I'm mentioning it that is because a lot of documentation of Redux is using action creators, so I want you to understand that concept, but again, you don't have to use it. Now, invoking actions in the applications is easy by using the dispatch method. I know you already saw that on the previous slide, but this is basically the way you use an action creator compared to what we did here, where we dispatch the entire object directly. We are just saying dispatch and then authenticate user and user data. So you just pass that in as an argument to that function. Now, let's talk a little bit about reducers then, because that's the man in the middle here. These are, again, the most important building blocks in terms of modifying state and so on. And this is really important to understand the concept. And that, reducers, they are, fuck the name. Don't worry about the name. It's source of much confusion. Why is it called a reducer? There is a story behind it, but it's a little bit above your pay grade in the beginning, right? So they are pretty much just JavaScript functions that take the current application state. It has access to the current application state, and it takes the action object that you've sent in, and then it returns a new state object, and the application state is updated based on that. Okay, that's the only thing they do, and that's what you have to understand: the old state, the things that you want to modify the state with, and then as a result you have new state. That's pretty straightforward. Now, this is an example of a reducer. By convention, the main reducer, and there are again many conventions here, but by my convention, the main reducer of your application is called the root reducer. You can combine multiple reducers if you want, but again, that is above your pay grade as well. It will not be done in today's demo. The only thing that happens is that the root reducer takes 2 arguments, the state and the action, and it's in its purest form. The only thing it does is to return state. Okay, that's it, and that updates your state object generally. Now, if we look at an actual reducer that actually does something else than just return state, we can take a look at the action type, right? So in this case, we're using a switch operator, and we're looking at the action type. And if we look at in case the action that we sent in is using authenticate user as the action type, then we take the state using a destruct method, hence the 3 dots. You take the state, and then you just change the key authenticated to true. This is an example only, but that is what that root reducer will return. If the state had an authenticated property and that was false, now it will be true. And if it didn't have one at all, it will have one now. Okay, so that's what this code does. And if you send in an action with another type, this reducer is not prepared to deal with it. So the only thing it does by default is to return the new state object. Okay, so in this case, the way this is set up, the only thing this guy will react to, or actually do something with, is if you send in an action object that contains type authenticate user. Okay, so again, if you're not sure about how destruct work, I think I mentioned this the other day, you need to go into the web, I think it's the Microsoft web, the developer network, MDN it's called. Look up destruct. It's really important. So you get that under control. All right, if we look at a more complex reducer, you have a root reducer. You take two arguments, the state and the action. You have a switch action that looks at action type. If it is you send in get articles or set articles, whatever you want to call it, you just pass in, you just return the action payload. Not sure if this pseudocode actually works, but that's another thing. I guess it does. And then authenticate user is another thing. So, and you could have the switch statement can grow out of proportion, and that's why you sometimes want to split things into multiple reducers. You understand? So because in a complex application, this might be really big, and the state object might be extremely complex. So that's what we are doing here. But again, the important thing here is to notice that even if the name is called state that we are returning, it is a new object. It's not the old state. It's a brand new object that is being returned. So that's important, right? Now then we have the store, which is the third component, of course, and that is the central object, or the tree that holds the state of the application. And once you have created it, it is modified using the reducers. But in order to create the store, you need to invoke a function that comes from the Redux library that is called create store. Okay, and then you have to tell that store what reducer you want to use. So it can only use one reducer. And that's why we have one top reducer that combines multiple in more complex applications. So you import the module create store from Redux, and you just invoke this function configure store. And now you create a function called configure store, and that's where you invoke the create store function from Redux. And you tell it that the root reducer will be the one that will control your behavior. That's it, folks. That's what it's all about at this stage. So let's see if we can do some coding. All right. And there are certain rules when we do code. In your course documentation, you have a new section that is called Intro to Redux. So if you want, you can follow along there, but it is much better if you follow along live with me what is going down. Are we clear?
Yes.
Right. Okie dokie. So let's see if we can get this thing under wraps. So we're gonna go into any folder where we can create our projects, and we will create a new application using the create React app scaffolder, and we will call this Hello World Redux. And please try to follow my lead, lowercase letters in application names and on Git. And again, after this demo, I want you to send in those GitHub repositories to me so I can see that you have followed along. Okay, so yarn create React app, right? And then the name would be hello world Redux. Again, the world's most complicated hello world application. Not the world's, I would say, but it's going to be complex. Right. So we do the installation and then we cd into this once this is done, and we're going to do swift spring cleaning so we get that the unnecessary things out of the way. Okay, so we're going to remove a few files and make sure that we are in a good state. And you've done this before, so this should be pretty straightforward. You know, the SVG logo and all of that shit needs to go, right? So let's see, cd hello world, and we're going to do open this up in VS Code, make this bigger. We're gonna go into source. I'm gonna remove the app CSS. I don't need it for anything. I'm gonna remove the app test.js. Whoops. Sometimes when I do this fast, I remove the wrong stuff. I'm gonna remove the logo SVG. I can remove the setup tests. Yeah, I could in principle remove the report of web vitals as well. I don't need that for anything. But we're just going to rename the app.js to app.jsx, you know the drill. That's pretty straightforward, right? And I'm going to go into the app.jsx. I'm going to remove everything, and I'm going to do just this Royal Air Force Central Europe, right? That's the spirit. That's a very good acronym. I will remember it through the rest of my days, I guess. And the last thing I will do is just to change this div into a fragment, and I'm going to say h1, and I will say hello world, right? I don't even need those fragments, to be honest, but let's keep those fragments around. Are you done with that, folks? Okie dokie. Yep. So let's see if we can. There's something fishy going on my screen here, but let's see if we can open a terminal, and we do yarn start, and we should see hello world on our screen. That's pretty straightforward, nothing super fancy going on there at all, I guess. Here I am on this screen. Hello world. Can you confirm, folks?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome, 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 awesome. So now head over to your terminal and
wait a minute, sir. It's not working for me.
what sort of error message are we getting?
It's giving error number syscall code path file name 7.
Yeah, so did you change it to app.jsx?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So can you share your screen?
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Right. So you have a constant app, hello world, right, and did you do yarn start? There you go. Scroll up a little bit. No, you have to show me more of the output. So don't run it again, just scroll up. Error event. So can you do in a separate terminal, can you do nvm.list, please?
NVM.
No, nvm list, not dot list, nvm list. Right, just change that to 14.16.0. nvm use 14.16.0. 14.16.0 dot.
Uh,
Right, and do just run yarn. Hold on a second. No. No. Okay. Oh shoot. So can you do nvm install 15.13?
that's
Right.
it.
Yep. You just hit it. Right. Yes, and now just do yarn. Can you do ls? Can you do nvm list again? Sorry. Right. And okay, do yarn start. Okay. No such file. What? Just do ls? What's going on? Emma, can you do a breakout session with Arun and help him to get going with this? Thank you very much. So you're gonna have to. There are actually a new functionality here that allows me to. No. Okay, no. If you guys just break out into another one, okay? Yeah. Thank you very much. So Arun, she will send you a new
Okay.
a new link. Okay. All right. We will just move on with this for now.
Can you present again your screen?
Yes, I will. I will present again. Right. Right. So at this stage, what we need to do is to basically do a git status. You know, we added this, so git add and git ciam scaffolds new React app, new line displays greeting on screen, right? Nothing super fancy. Okay, so we're gonna do one thing that is pretty straightforward for you. So back to the code, import the use state module from React. We want to say const greeting, greeting, and then set greeting, and that would be use state, and then we will say Venus here, right? And then we will change this from world to we're going to inject some JavaScript, and we will say greeting, right? Is that pretty straightforward what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Right. So in our application, it should say hello Venus now. There's nothing to it really. Arun, are you working with Emma? Good stuff. Okay.
Fuck, I didn't get it.
So we are importing use state.
Yeah.
We're setting const greeting, then
greeting, set
greeting, and then with curly brackets here you just say greeting.
Yeah.
And what does it say?
You just say hello.
Did you set it to Venus?
Sorry.
There you go.
Oh, no.
It's the blanket.
Yeah.
You need the blanket.
Yeah.
You need the blanket. All right. So there's nothing to that. You've done this hundreds of times before, probably, right? So basically what we need to do is to say git status, right? And then git ciam greeting is set in component state. That's, you know, pretty straightforward. Okay, so now that we know this, we need to add a few dependencies here. Well, not few, 2 dependencies. So we're going to say yarn add, and we're going to add the Redux library. Okay, and then we're going to add React Redux, like this. And Redux is Redux, and the React Redux is a set of functions that will help us to use Redux in React, which implicitly means, while this is installing, I can just tell you that Redux can of course be used in other contexts than with React. We're looking at it from a React perspective, but it could be used in other applications as well. So it did install whatever we needed, and now we need to wait a little bit for Arun. How are you doing on that NVM installation and so on?
It's not working actually. We are trying to fix it.
Okay, so were you able to run the Netflix client and the
Yeah.
Slow Food client and everything
Yes,
like that?
I was able to do that.
Okay. That's a really weird problem that we're facing now. What's Emma saying? What's going on?
We are trying to fix it, so I think I will completely join with. So it's yarn issue that Emma saying we have to fix it. So I will
Okay.
leave the meeting. This one.
Okay. All right.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, let's now that we have Redux and the React Redux installed, we need to create a few folders. Okay. So we have a source folder already. So we're gonna create a folder in the source folder that will be called state. And inside of that folder, we will create another folder that is called reducers. And then we will create another one that is called store. And then we will create a file in source reducers. What?
What's that?
State reducer.
Through this. Oh,
Yeah, of course. Right, I knew that. Reduce. Right, of course, I knew that. Now, source state reducers, and we're going to call this guy root reducer.js. It's a JavaScript file. It's not a JSX. So this is okay. It's plain JavaScript function. And then we want to touch another guy in source state store that will be called configure store, configure store.js. And then we will create another guy in that store folder that is called initial state.js. Okay. So in principle, what you should have is a state folder with reducers, root reducer, and configure store and initial state.js. Can you confirm?
Yes. Can confirm.
Okay. So far, so good, right? Not that complicated.
It's all the guys that we are touching today.
All the guys that we're touching. You're not making a homophobic joke now, are you?
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
Okay, so now that we've touched those fellas, we need to let's start with the initial state, okay? No, let's start with the reducer actually. So go to the root reducer, and we're gonna let's start with the initial state. Sorry about that. But it's just jumping around. So we want to say const, and we're going to call this constant initial state, and we will say this will be just an object, and that object will say message, and we will say, well, I'm let's say Mars. Okay, we did Venus, we said world, and we said Venus, and now we're going to say Mars, right? And then we just want to export default initial state like this. You done with that?
Yep.
So if when shit works, our application will say hello Mars. That's the objective here. Okie dokie. So let's go to the reducer now. And so here we will say const root reducer equals, and this guy will be a function like this, and then we're just gonna export default here like this. Okay, but now we need to know about the state, the initial state in this reducer. So we will say import from /store initial state. We want to import the initial state. Okay, and so here in our reducer we want to say that state, you know, which is one of the arguments that the reducer takes, it's actually the initial state that we just imported. Okay, and the only thing we want this guy to do is to return that state. We're picking the low-hanging fruit here, people. The only thing we're doing is to grabbing that initial state that we set in this constant and making it a part of our state object. It's, you know, that's the first objective, is to get that Mars up on screen. Okay, so let's see if we can move over. So now we have the initial state, we have the reducer. Now
Can I have 30 seconds? Thank you.
For what? What are you gonna do during those 30 seconds? I'm just asking. That's okay, of course you can have 30 seconds.
No, my MCADIR didn't work, so everything mixed up.
What didn't work?
No, my MCAD, when I did MCADIR, like creating files, it created folders instead, so I had to type it.
Because it's called touch, but you were on the wrong. What
I missed that one. No, I just missed that one. So I just made it. That's okay.
Making homophobic jokes about touching.
I know, but
now you will never forget that. Okay.
Never. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's head over to store. So we go. So you have the reducer and you have the initial state, right? So let's take a look at the store. So in the store. Oh gosh, sorry. In the store thing, we want to do something like this. We want to import a few things. So we're going to import from Redux a module, so curly brackets, and we're going to say we're going to import the create store function. And then we want to import from our reducers, from our own file system, we want to go to reducers and import the reducer, right? And just going to say root reducer like this. So we have two imports, and then we want to say const configure store equals function. So we add an arrow function here, and we're gonna also, just so we don't forget, export this baby out. So export default configure store like this. Okay, so what are we doing inside of that function? Well, we are just saying return create store, which is what we imported from Redux, and we just pass in one argument. Again, this is Redux as simple as you get, and so the only thing we pass in here is the root reducer. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And that, my friends, is the Redux setup. That is it. The next thing we want to do is to connect this setup with our application. So at this stage, the Redux is configured, it has its initial state and so on, but it's not connected to our application yet. Do you understand?
Okay.
We need to make the bridge, and that bridge is made by using the React Redux library. Okay, you remember we installed two libraries, one called Redux and the other one React Redux. So
Yeah,
yes,
Thomas,
go ahead.
can you a bit explain why do we need this configure store? I'm kind of
We're creating the
there.
store. We are, well, that's the bridge.
So this initial state is just like a constant, right? Basically,
Yeah.
we just keep it there. And configure store is like the store itself.
Configure, the create store creates the store. We haven't called on configure store yet, so we haven't created it. But I was saying that this is the setup itself, right? We will use the configure store in just a second.
Okay.
All right. But those three files, the root reducer, and how far did you guys get? Emma and Arun, welcome back, by the way.
We solved it. I have no idea what's up really. We just restarted the terminal, but we're gonna have to fix because Arun has lost his ZSH, so he's just on bash. So we're gonna have to fix that afterwards. But that takes a bit longer time. But he's up and running.
Okay, is he ready to do these things?
Yeah. Now everything works.
Okay.
Like usual.
So Arun, I need you to access the course documentation where this is being created, right? And you are on the section that is called adding Redux.
Okay.
Right. So you have to work your way through these instructions. You know, create the initial state, create the reducer, and
I don't have that one on my documentation.
I also
reload the
don't have
page.
this documentation.
Emma, have we added them? This is the.
What is it called? Redux? No, I have nothing new here.
Can you follow the
It's
link?
in the advanced React and Rails.
I got
it's
it.
inside that. Okay, I thought it was a complete new one.
That's the
No.
one that we are looking at.
Yes.
Have you found it?
Yeah.
Arun,
Yeah.
have you found it most importantly?
Yes, I found it.
Right. So can you work your way through these instructions that I just highlighted down to
Okay.
the configure store? That's the important. And so you have to work swiftly on this one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the next thing that we will do.
Thomas, can we pause? I fucked up a bit. Just 2 seconds. Sorry.
What did
Or
you?
can I jump with Emma for 5 minutes maybe?
You have to tell me what happened, David. Okay.
I mixed up with the files. Like rookie
What did
mistake.
you mix up with the files?
If you wait there for a second.
I need you to answer. You know.
Yeah, I backed up everything, so everything just deleted because it was in a file. Can you open configure store, please?
You can also go to your course documentation.
It's I have to do the exam stuff before, so.
I'm not really following, but I guess it's okay.
No, it's not opening until I do this.
Yeah, it's like you need to complete previous stuff in order for that to be open in documentation.
Okay.
And it's
okay.
exams.
So while David is doing this, I just want to reiterate we have installed the Redux library, and we have done a minimal setup with setting and creating an object that it will be the initial state that will contain only one single property message, or we'll say Mars. That's one way of doing this. It doesn't necessarily have to be the only way of doing this, but that's how we chose to do this at this point. We are creating a reducer that loads that initial state and sets it to be the state of the application. That's what I'm doing here. And the only thing that this reducer does at this point is to just simply return that state. Don't modify it in any way, just return. And then we created a file called configure store, and that file is importing the create store function from Redux. That is the function that actually needs to be invoked to create that state object. And then we also imported the root reducer from our subfolder where that is being stored. And then we created a function that is called configure store, which makes use of that create store module that we imported from Redux and passes in the root reducer into that function. And as always, we are going to use these functions in other files, so we have to export them. That's what the export does. Is there any questions about these three things, about you being curious on where the F do we use the configure store, which is a relevant question, and that will be answered as soon as our colleagues have played a little bit of catch up. Okay? So
root reducer, please, and I'm done. Oh, I think I'm done. Yeah. Thank you.
Arun, where are you?
I think I also are done with the root reducer. No. Can you a little bit check it if I'm confused, maybe? Just
well, let's see if we can move on and then see what's gonna happen. Okay.
Okay.
If you, I don't know if you guys have a separate hangout open. Emma, perhaps you can check his virus if he's feeling a little unsure about the things. But let's move on. Let's make a commit. Git status. We have a few new folders and new files, so git add. Don't forget that. And do a git status again as a sanity check. Never forget that. Never ignore these things. You want to see what you have in your version control. Then git commit am adds and configures Redux. That's the thing we are doing here. All right. So now, folks, we will turn our attention to the index.js that is in our root folder. And it looks something like that. We are importing React, we're importing React DOM, the index CSS, the app component, and so on. Do you see that? Yes. Okay. So for the sake of this demo, we're going to remove the strict mode, actually, for now. And it should look like just like this. Do not forget the comma after the app, and format your code and so on. Once you have removed the strict code, just for the sake of it, make sure that your application is still displaying Hello Venus. Okay, so it works. So we don't want to have any surprises later on. You good?
Yep.
Is David up and running? Hello Venus is displaying. Is Arun's Hello Venus displaying? Okay, Emma, you need to jump in with him.
Yep. Arun, just jump back into the meet where we were before.
All right, you can mute yourself here or whatever.
I'll be there too for a second.
All right. So the next thing we want to do in our index.js is to import a new module from React Redux, and that would be let's just say React Redux, and that will be a module, so curly brackets, and we say provider. Okay, and then we need to import the configure store, so we will say import from dot state store configure store, and that would be, we will call this configure store, of course. Figure store, like this. Are we done with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now underneath all the imports, we're just going to move down here. We will say const store equals configure store, and this is a function, so don't remember those two things here. And then we will add a comment, and we will say hack to gain access to store in dev tools. And here we will say window.store equals store. Does anyone know what this does? It binds the store object to the global window object that we have available to us. You understand? That's what this does. And that's why I wanted you to add this comment, because it has nothing to do with the application itself. It is, we will use it for manual testing of this function. Are you good on that? Okay, so at this stage, line 12. What do you mean line 12? What? Let's reload. No, it's okay. So if you reload your application, this should still work. It should say hello Venus. Okay. All right. So now I need you to open your developer tools, and I want you to say window.store, and you should see what I'm seeing at the moment, meaning that there's an object return saying dispatch function, subscribe function, get state, replace reducer, observable. Is that so?
Yes.
Okay. So Arun, what we did here is on line 3, we imported a provider from React Redux.
In index.js?
Yeah? Yes, in index.js, right. We imported the provider, so that's a module, so hence therefore we need to have the curly brackets. And then we also imported on line 4 in my case, from state store configure store, we imported this configure store function. Okay. So go ahead and do that. And then we added this line that I just highlighted, where I say const store equals configure store.
Okay.
And then we added a comment where we said, and I want that comment to be in place, guys, really, saying hack to gain access to store in dev tools. And here we simply, underneath we said window.store equals store, which means that we are gaining access to the global object window, or we're binding store to that global object, basically. And this is all documented in the course documentation, so we should be able to do that, both David and Arun. Okay, now the interesting thing here is if we take a look at that object, we can now do Windows Store dot get state, and this is a function. And if you do that, you will see that message. That is the state of the application. Please confirm that this worked for you.
Yes.
Yes.
window.store.getState.
Yes.
Yes.
David, are you there?
Just 1 second.
And Arun, are you there?
No, sir.
Right on, folks. So this is Redux as simple as it gets, and could be a bit there are a few moving parts and a few files that needs to be set up and configured, but in principle we have come a long way here by setting up or configuring Redux, and we are halfway through connecting our application with Redux. We've come so far, so we have it actually available to us in the dev tools, so we can use that for manual testing. Now, there is nothing I can do here to change the message in any way yet, because we don't have that functionality in our reducer. I just keep on talking while David and Arun is playing catch up here. Okay. So we can't really change anything, but in principle we could use the dispatch function already in this one to dispatch an action should we want to do that, right? And you remember that it needs to have a type, and so that type would be in principle whatever in this case, but this won't do anything to us, right? We have dispatched it in this way, so just so you know, we kind of know that. And while they are still playing catch up, I'm gonna go into the root reducer, and if you want to follow along, this is not needed for the application. We can allow this baby to take another argument called action, and we can set a debugger here. This is JavaScript, so you can set debuggers before the return statement, okay? And we can now reload this. This will stop the debugger directly in the reducer, probably. Release that one, go to our console, and dispatch this again, this type whatever. I don't know if you did that, but I will do it again. And now we are halting the execution in the reducer again. And if we go to console and just say type, no, sorry, action, and you can see that it has been dispatched, right? So we have access to that action object.
It's giving provider is not something that I have provided here.
No, not something, Arun. What does it say, please? Are you talking to me, Arun, or are you talking to Emma?
I'm sorry, I was talking to Emma. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. And David, where are you now at this stage?
I'm not getting it.
Getting what is it in this case, please?
I have everything that you have. Can you please open the root reducer folder?
But are you not seeing Hello Venus, or what is it that you're not getting?
I don't see anything right now. It's cannot read property get state, it says.
When you're trying to are you doing windows.store, or do you see? Okay, let me ask you this: do you see Hello Venus?
Not anymore. I used to see, but not anymore.
Okay, can you share your screen, please?
Yeah. So everyone.
No, it's
bad day. Shit.
Right.
Is it state here?
So no, it's state equal initial state, David. Right. Get state of undefined.
I think index.js. Look at that.
I fixed it.
Well, we haven't come so far yet. You understand? We haven't come so far at all. This is so. Could you just remove the provider for now? from there? Just do app. Right. So just follow along. Do not jump forward, okay? Because
Yeah, but
that error is actually related to the provider not having the store object. So that's
okay.
what it was. So,
okay.
all right. Right. So I will resume my my screen share with you guys. Hopefully, if I just can find myself, here I am. Right. Okay. So back to the drawing board again, and we have that that window object and so on. We can remove the debugger now. We don't need that for anything. You can keep the action as the second argument. So please go into the reducer and add the action as the second argument, everyone, okay? After the state equals initial state, comma, action. All right? Okay. Now, we need to go into the index.js again, and now we need to do what David did without me asking for it, and that would be to wrap the app component inside a provider. So this is what it needs to look like. But before you get all trigger happy, we need to pass in one prop to the provider, and the provider needs to be aware of the store. So you just say provider store equals store. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it is. And from now on, you will be able to use store inside of your application. Okay. Unfortunately, what follows in your course documentation is a bit outdated, because this section where we say connect to Redux is not how I will present this to you now. Okay, so you need to pay really close attention now. Okay, guys?
Yes.
All right. So we will go over to app.jsx, and we will comment out this line, and we will we can leave the use state. We will not use it for now. Okay, we will add a new line, a new import, and the import will be from React Redux something called use selector. Okay.
Yep.
And here we will say const message message. That's what we call it. All right, message. That's what we call it. Const message equals use selector and parentheses. But here comes the weird part. Now we have to say state, an arrow function, and then return state dot message. This is an state. Right, this is an implicit return. You don't have to say use the word return if you use a one-liner, nor do you need curly brackets on a one-liner. You understand?
Yes.
And now we will just call this message here, hello message. Okay?
Yep.
And now when we reload, we're saying hello Mars. So now we are using application state for the most complicated hello world application.
I didn't get it, so I probably did something wrong here.
Right. So we need to import use selector from React Redux.
Yeah.
And then we need to say const message
equals use selector
state an arrow function,
arrow state dot message,
and then the hello message,
yes,
and
but
then
maybe
reload your page. Just reload your page.
I reloaded. Provider is not defined.
Then
so
you
it's
need
the
to go
provider.
to index.js.
Yeah.
You have to import the provider, and you have to
From-
say provider store around the app component.
Fuck, I've done that.
Share your screen, and we will debug that.
Maybe you see a typo or something.
Maybe
that I
there's a
don't see.
typo.
Yeah.
I saw it
Okay.
now.
Okay, I didn't even have the chance to share your screen here. So okay, you
Oh.
found it.
No, it's just got it wrong.
No, it's wrong.
The A.
Provider.
No A there.
So there's an autocomplete. You don't even have to do that. There's still a typo here on the top one.
Put the I in front of
Both-
the
both
D.
There you go.
You can also
And then-
copy it from line 3. Sure.
There's an I too many after the D.
Jesus tits.
There we go.
There
now
we go.
please show
Now
us.
it should work. Damn.
Hello Mars. All right. Good stuff.
I put this in before, so then I spelled it wrong.
No. Right. Okay, so what time is it? It's 10:43. Let's just do one single thing here before we part our from this. So we're gonna go to the root reducer, and we're gonna add, look, a switch statement, and you have a scaffolder for this. You see, when you start to type the word switch, it comes up with this box here. So if you just click this, do you understand? You get all the stuff directly. So there's no need to overcomplicate things. So what do we want to look at? We want to look at the action type, right? So that's we say switch action type. You format your code, and then you say case. We're going to say as a string change greeting, right? Without the spelling mistakes. Change greeting. We're going to remove the break, and we're going to say return an object, and again dot state. Okay, and then comma, and then message, and we will say action dot payload. Okay, and then the default will be you remove the break, and you just move the return state into the default action here. Does this make sense?
Yep.
So, and this is crucial. An object that says, take a look at state, whatever it is, but change the message to whatever we're passing in here. Okay? All right, so we're going to reload our application, and we're going to do this Windows Store dispatch, but now we will not say whatever. We will say change greeting, and then we're going to go out there and say, and we want to say payload, and the payload will be just a string, and it will be Uranus. You know, Uranus. Oh god. Right. And there we go. Uranus.
My anus.
So this thing here, this dispatch, you know, you can copy that, just not the Windows Store, but just the dispatch typer. Just copy this, and we're going to go over to our app.jsx, and we're going to import another module that is called use dispatch. Okay, and then we're just going to say const dispatch equals use dispatch, like this. and here I will add a button, and we'll call change. Say hey, say hi to Uranus. All right. So here to this button, I will bind an on-click event, and that will be a function. So just an arrow function. And here I will just say dispatch type change greeting payload Uranus. I'm just going to paste in that what I just did there. Okay. So this should look something like this. Hello Mars, say hi to Uranus, and you click on it and it says hi, hello Uranus.
Yep.
Are you there?
Yes.
Awesome.
Not yet.
So while the guys are playing a little bit of catch up, I just want to recap. It could not get simpler than this. Do you understand? You are working with actions, and this is an action, right? You are dispatching this action using the dispatch hook because you're creating it here. Const dispatch equals use dispatch. You are preparing your reducer to act accordingly by adding this switch saying that if this action that you're getting has a type of change greeting, just take whatever is in message and replace it with the payload. Okay? Pretty straightforward. And if it's not, then just return default state. Don't do anything at all. And the default state is saying Mars, right? So you've seen pretty much all the things you need to see with this implementation. There is one topic left, because everything else with Redux is just a slightly more complex way of using these things, right? So it's fairly repetitive, but there is one part that we haven't covered, and that is that you cannot send in functions into this object. Okay. Now regular objects can hold functions as properties in JavaScript. The store object cannot do that. And that's pretty useful actually, because then you can pass functionality around and so on. So in order to do that, you have to extend Redux with something called a func. Yeah. When I hear when I hear the word func, I think about, I don't know why I'm making this association, but I'm thinking about a guy on the beach that wears these very small bath shorts, but because they are called trunks, aren't they? I don't know, but for some reason that's what I make the association func. I don't know why, but anyway, it is called func. There's a completely different story behind what funcs are doing for us, and we will cover that in a different demo. But this is the simple thing. Redux as simple as it gets. Anyway, David, you struggled a little bit. How was this?
Yeah, sorry guys. I just
no. There's nothing to be sorry about.
Got back on the touch thing. I just pushed up without yeah. Otherwise, it's understandable. Yeah, it's new things.
Did you get everything up to speed now? So
yeah, everything's up to date. Everything's good. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, good stuff. Luke.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to use. It seems kind of straightforward in how you update the page, so how it updates. I think it'll be quite handy to use in some of the things we want to do going forward, to maybe simplify the code a little better.
Cool.
I think.
Cool. Christer.
Yeah, it seems nice. Maybe I have to go through it and try to change the states and play around a little to change the states and see how it works. Yeah.
Of course. All right.
It seems nice.
Good stuff. Seva?
Yeah, I will take this instead of passing down the props 3 layers up and then 3 layers down through the app. So
that's the spirit. That's exactly what this is doing for us. Right. Lucas?
Yeah, no, this is I think a great way to get into the application state, and also compare to some of the other solutions out there that seem super complex. I think. I don't know if that's the topic for now, but I kind of want to see how you use different reducers.
Yeah,
because I hadn't really.
You're right. It's not a topic for today.
But yeah, that seems fun.
It is. No, it is. It is highly relevant, but not for today's talk, unfortunately. Arun, did you get this up and running at the end?
Nope. And I think I'll have to go with your video again and to try to understand it properly, because it was so much for me to run here and there. And it made things difficult for me to understand and to follow here and there. So I'm sorry for that, but I will go with this again. Then I will try to understand it properly.
Okay, good stuff. Now, again, it's really important that we have the right tools set up and the right environment at all times. But good stuff. Keep at it. Go over this and report back. Kim, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's nice. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit. But I'm wondering, like, use context and use reducer, like difference with like. I heard about it. I like read a little bit about it, and yeah, so it's a little bit similar. Like some people recommend different. And
yeah. So I chose to show you this using the Redux library. The use context and use reducers are a different way to manage states, basically. So, but I wanted to show you this from this perspective instead. So they don't play well together, but it's a topic for another talk, basically.
Okay.
Emma, did I miss anything? Did I deliver this properly?
I guess so. I trust you did. I wasn't here much. But yeah. And the only thing I can say, guys, is that like really we have said it a lot, but especially for this one, focus on the things you do know. Like it is just an object. It is just a switch case changing that object, and it is just like JavaScript functions being that changes that object basically. So it becomes complex because there is a lot of files, but it's a bit like when you think about Rails as well. In the beginning it was just a lot of files and folders, but once you kind of let go of that there is a lot of files and folders, then it's actually not it's not more complicated than an object, really.
Exactly. And
it took me a while to get there, so that's why I'm giving you that information.
Absolutely. And one last thing now, remember that like this button here, it doesn't have to be here. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen perhaps.
But we all remember the famous button.
Yeah, the famous button here, right? So right. So this button doesn't have to be here. It can be in a totally different component, somewhere in a completely different part of the application. It will still dispatch this, and if this guy is subscribing to that particular state or part of the state, either the entire state object or part of the state, it will be updated. Do you understand? Because it will sense that message has been changed by this button, and it will re-render the object with the new data. You understand? So that is the beauty. You can separate this dispatch and selector into totally different components, again in totally different parts of the app, and you will still reap the benefits of state update. That pretty much covers it for us, people. Thank you very much for following along. What I need you to do is to, of course, make a final commit. Go to your GitHub repositories, connect your local repo with your GitHub account, push this up, and send me a link to that repository, basically. Okay?
Yes.
What did I do in this one, by the way? Git diff. All right, add some Uranus button, the famous button. Right. So we are connecting. So what I'm doing here is connect Redux with application. Adds what? Oh, okay. Well, I was about to do a multi-line, but I forgot to remove the last double quote. So anyway, that's what's gonna happen now. We're gonna have to live with this. We're gonna go to GitHub, my own. I'm gonna create a new repository, and I'm gonna call this one Hello World Redux March 2021. So I forever remember this fantastic session with you guys. When I'm gonna grab my URL, do git remote add origin this, and now I'm just gonna git push origin main and reload this baby boy, and we're up and running on this one. Awesome, 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 good stuff. And now I have 4 more commits into my punchline, and life is beautiful. It looks like I haven't done anything over the last few days. That's not true. That's not true. But okay, people, thank you very much for tagging along. This is the repo of for this thing, and I'm looking forward to your contributions. So long, folks.
So long.
And to my viewers here, thank you very much for tagging along. This will be updated to YouTube, and there will be, of course, a link to the repository should you want to use that code for anything. All right, thank you very much for your attention. If there's any questions, reach out to me, but for now that will do it for me. Thank you very much. So long.